When you scroll through a sea of pre-built gaming rigs, the headlines scream i9, RTX 3070, 1TB SSD, and you start picturing buttery smooth frames and instant load times. Then you read the same old complaints about the case sounds like a vacuum cleaner or the GPU throttles after 10 minutes, and you wonder if you're about to waste a big chunk of cash on a machine that looks perfect on paper but feels underdelivered in practice. I've been there, and that's why I'm breaking down the CYBERPOWERPC Gamer Xtreme VR so you can skip the guesswork. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the core of this system is an Intel Core i9-12900KF paired with an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3070. On paper, that's a high-end combo for 1440p gaming. And for most modern titles it does live up to the hype, but only if the rest of the build can keep the parts fed with stable power and cool air. In my own testing, the i9's 12-core architecture shone in CPU-heavy games like Civilization VI and in content creation workloads such as rendering 4K video clips in Adobe Premiere. The RTX 3070, meanwhile, held steady at 100 frames per second in competitive shooters like Valorant at 1080p ultra settings, and it managed a respectable 70 frames per second in Cyberpunk 2077 with medium ray tracing on a 1440p monitor. That's the kind of performance most gamers are after, especially if you want to dip into VR titles like Beat Saber without dropping below the 90 frames per second comfort threshold. But the real test is what happens when you push the machine for several hours. The case is a fairly compact mid-tower, which saves desk space but also means the airflow has to work harder. I ran a marathon session of Destiny 2 with a couple of background streaming overlays, and after about 45 minutes the fans spun up noticeably. The acoustic profile was louder than a typical office printer, which isn't a deal-breaker for a dedicated gaming setup, but it's something to consider if you share a room or plan on using the PC for late-night study sessions. The thermal sensors reported CPU temps hovering around 78°C under load high, but within safe limits, and the GPU stayed under 73°C, so throttling wasn't a problem. If you're comfortable with a bit of fan noise in exchange for that raw horsepower, you'll be fine. One of the quieter wins for this rig is the 1TB NVMe PCIe SSD. Games that usually take minutes to install, think Red Dead Redemption 2 or Assassin's Creed Valhalla, loaded in under 30 seconds, and level transitions felt almost instantaneous. The SSD also gave me a nice head start when I set up a dual boot with Windows 11 Home and a Linux distro for game modding. The extra space meant I could keep my Steam library and my development tools without constantly shuffling files. The 16GB of DDR4 RAM is adequate for current titles, but it's something to watch if you plan on heavy multitasking or future-proofing for games that start demanding 32GB. Upgrading the RAM is possible, but the cramped interior makes the process a tad fiddly compared to more spacious chassis. Connectivity is another area where the Xtreme VR shines for everyday use. Built-in Wi-Fi 6 gave me a stable 400 megabits per second connection when I streamed from my bedroom, and the inclusion of multiple USB-C and USB-A ports meant I could hook up a gaming headset, a capture card, and an external SSD without reaching for a hub. The free lifetime tech support that CYBERPOWERPC offers is surprisingly generous. I once called them about a driver issue, and they walked me through a clean reinstall in under 10 minutes. That level of post-purchase service can be a lifesaver if you're not a P-savvy user. Now, who should actually consider buying this machine? If you're a gamer who wants to jump straight into 1440p titles, dabble in VR, or start streaming without building a custom rig from scratch, the Xtreme VR gives you a ready-to-play experience. It's also a solid option for creators who need a strong CPU for video editing but don't want to shell out for a workstation-grade workstation. The price point sits comfortably between entry-level pre-builts and the no-compromise enthusiast market, so you get high-end performance without the premium markup that comes with boutique cases. On the flip side, if your primary focus is ultra-quiet operation, you might want to look elsewhere. The noise level, while acceptable for a gaming den, could be distracting in a shared living space. Also, if you're aiming for 4K gaming at max settings, the RTX 3070 will start to show its limits. You'll need to dial down settings or upgrade the GPU later, which could be a hassle in a compact case. Lastly, power-hungry users should double-check that the supplied PSU can handle future upgrades. CYBERPOWERPC typically includes a 600W unit, which is enough for the current configuration but may be stretched thin if you add a higher-tier GPU later. A practical scenario that illustrates the machine's sweet spot: imagine you're hosting a weekend gaming marathon with friends. You fire up Apex Legends, Minecraft, and a couple of VR experiences back-to-back. The RTX 3070 handles the fast-paced shooters without stutter, the i9 breezes through world-building tasks in Minecraft, and the SSD eliminates any loading lag.